I believe I have been quite belligerent before on this channel when speaking of Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove. I have to be honest, I always felt as though, for younger people closer to my age, born in the 1980s or later, I don't think they would care for this film so much if it weren't amongst the Kubrick filmography. If this was Billy Wilder, I'm not convinced they would care about it. I think everyone wanted in on and was so captivated by 2001, Clockwork Orange, Shining, and Full Metal Jacket that Doctor Strangelove they wanted to believe in too. Here's the thing, I have no doubt that, to those who saw it upon its release, Doctor Strangelove was a remarkable, unfathomably courageous, morbidly existentially confronting, a film released after the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Kennedy assassination that actually went there, let's say. The bravery that would have projected from that film, it may have been the edgiest satire ever released relative to its context, so I understand why it was so lauded by those who were subjects of that zeitgeist. I will never doubt what this film meant to those people. Naturally, they placed it very high on lists of not only the best comedy films ever made, but the best films ever made, on a level of the other Kubrick classics. A comedy film so good, so funny, so genius, it compared with 2001, Clockwork Orange, Shining, et al. But does it? Is the film more admirable and observably, objectively witty than outright belly laugh funny? The idea of a comedy as something which makes you laugh out loud, out of your willful control, this is extremely subjective to the times, because even now, things that made people my age laugh out loud in the 2000s are not considered funny by that same target demographic now. The threshold of naughty comedy widened, but then sensibility shifted toward a more considered, potentially inoffensive comedy, plus humour and satire about how difficult comedy is in the contemporary. In any case, I'm actually not the greatest enjoyer of at least American comedy, and despite the presence of Peter Sellers, who I'm not the greatest fan of anyway, Doctor Strangelove just feels more like American silly face, screwball slapstick / dry politics, overrated yank wank, than British or Australian sometimes comedic ventures anyway, although Doctor Strangelove may be the better film of its kind, worth thoroughly admiring and appreciating in its own right, and no, it doesn't make me laugh out loud, not much does. Mr. Show with Bob and David did, but that's more Python than American, maybe. I sincerely don't believe that younger people find Doctor Strangelove funny or even good. I only do because I see it as an overall production, a sharp, able script, superbly performed. Scott, Hayden, and the angelic Tracy Reed are the highlights, and actually with a magnificent sense of the visual, the cinematographic, for what it is worth, one of the very, very best shot comedies of all time, no doubt there. But wait, what if Doctor Strangelove could be what all of those IMDb top 250 cultists pretended or claimed, or, if they were of older age, sincerely believed it to be? It would be the perfect, legitimate, infinite jest. That's how it was sold on the old IMDb, circa 2008, say, and I wish it were that. If I pretend it is that, I am happy forever. I'll elaborate, to my own peril perhaps. I was 12, in between the summer holidays which bridged primary school and high school. I was already in love with 2001 A Space Odyssey, and I had to know more about this man Stanley Kubrick. The Shining had fascinated me for ages, thanks to The Simpsons, and then a very detailed, at that time, IMDb FAQ page. Doctor Strangelove, what an odd title, so high on the IMDb top 250, I think even the highest ranked Kubrick film at that time maybe. I had to see it. How I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. Well, or not, when I eventually had the chance to tape it very late one night on SBS, which did force me to watch it on a small uncomfortable TV in a living room, a secondary TV where the recorder was still attached, I watched it excitedly during those summer holidays, and nothing. 12-year-old AOD didn't get it. I had already seen and been aware of the ending moments, the montage of nuclear explosions to Vera Lynn's We Meet Again. YouTube was very interesting like that, of course. Now, it was easy to see why that moment was so wickedly extraordinary and sickly amusing, not laugh out loud funny even, but so enchantingly bleak. Well, I had been content or even fascinated by the concept of the apocalypse ever since I, at 6 or 7, had learnt of the major dinosaur extinction theory, the infamous asteroid impact. The whispered end times of a Christian or Catholic-based primary school education is also a factor, I would suppose. But then I remember Planet of the Apes, beneath the Planet of the Apes, of course. I saw those relatively young, and so the concept of the end of the world was one which I felt psychologically at ease with, even, as I said, rather fascinated by. And so that closing montage of Doctor Strangelove registered to me, before having seen the film even, as I said, registered to me as a thing of marvellous beauty, I have to admit. And sadly that moment was overshadowed by the begrudging disappointment I felt after having viewed the film itself. At this time in my life, having attempted to compose films of my own, Pandemonium will be available to download probably during the first half of this year. I have come around to much admiring Dr. Strangelove, but to feel as though it is what I always wanted or hoped it to be, I have to choose to let it. In that world, yes, I adore Dr. Strangelove. It is the best and most relevant comedy ever made. Let's face it, there's no going back after we invented the doomsday button. There is no relaxation, happiness, or security like one felt in a pre-nuclear bomb age. It will never not be the most relevant issue of all time. There was no real reason to stop worrying about it after the Cold War. Now the Cold War is around again, essentially, and with climate change, Dr. Strangelove's attitudes to the incoming apocalypse, indeed being the ultimate apocalypse comedy in general, might ensure it remain the most symbolically relevant comedy film ever made, even if it doesn't ever make one laugh out loud. It might still bomb for some of you, but hopefully this video you have learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. Summer 2008/2009, Australia wasn't significantly affected by the GFC. We were still pretty chill, and Facebook hadn't inserted that chip into everyone's brain yet, metaphorically speaking, I assume, and Tracy Reed's swimwear was as exciting as cinema had ever been. Actually, the latter might still be true. That's the most beautiful woman on film, along with Honey Rider and Bardot in Contempt, definitely. Also, shout out to Matty Diop in 35 Shots of Rum, Han Ye-ri in A Quiet Dream, and Leela Desai in Jiban Maran, as far as the classy and more elegant art films are concerned. Dr. Strangelove, you've learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. That closes that informal Kubrick retrospective. Now we have some Antonio Margheriti to look forward to, or not. Actually, we'll talk about some other films first. Wait and see.